Well, Chelsea have done it. They have fought their way, Kathleen, to another WSL title. And you would have been really silly to bet against them at the rate that they were going this entire season. Just listening to Emma Hayes as well after that massive match that got them the win, their 5-0 win over Reading. She was saying that this is the one. This is what it feels like, it's especially given last year having to deal with the cloud of COVID and the whole, well, you only won because of points per game. This was pretty much the perfect season and perfect ending for them, wasn't it?
It was incredible. And I think it was really interesting when you said about Emma Hayes talking after the game. She was saying, league titles are the things that matter to her. It's great to win the FA Cup. It's great to win Continental Cup. It's great to be in the Champions League final. But a league title shows that you're consistently performing at the highest level. They've just been so impressive. Fran Kirby and Sam Kerr, where would Chelsea be without that partnership? They've just been game after game, so consistent, such high performers. And I think as well, the depth of that bench, there's so few teams that can pull out the sort of players that Chelsea can when things aren't going their way.
And as you said, they were absolutely dominant this season. And even when they had to dig in deep, they still managed to come out on the good side of it as well. You mentioned Fran Kirby and, of course, Sam Kerr, who have been at the forefront for Chelsea. But still, as Emma Hayes as well said, like, you look at this group of girls and they play like a team. They are a team. You can tell that, straight from the top down, they are a unit, a solid unit. Do you think that also had something to do with their dominance this season?
I think so. I think Emma Hayes has been really interesting during the week, and she was talking about the fact that Bethany England was so important to them last season, and then this season struggled for different reasons, struggled to get in the squad, which has incredible performers, struggled with concussion, with injury, and they had to rely on other players. There had to be other leaders in that team. And she was kind of making the point that, she's been there for so many years herself that she can't rely on one person, one voice, because it gets tiring. And I think it's really interesting how she's built up a whole group of leaders in that team. So no matter who's on the pitch, that there's someone you can rely on. You even saw it in the last couple of matches before the last Champions League semi-final. Magda Eriksson, the captain, she was injured. Such a key part of their defense, but also such a key leader. And while it was obvious Chelsea did miss her, they were still able to find that leadership, that guidance from other players on the team. So I think the squad depth, the fact that they're so cohesive as a unit, Emma Hayes said it herself after the game today, this is the best squad that she has ever worked with, and it because of how they operate together, because they know where other players are. Sometimes you watch Chelsea play and you're like, they're not even looking at each other. They just know where other people are going to be on the pitch. And that's what you want for a totally cohesive, totally consistent squad.
And I mean, they are just impressive, like, all across the board. But for you, looking at them this season, I know obviously you cover them quite closely. What's been probably the most impressive part of this current Chelsea setup?
I think it would have to be the selflessness of a lot of the players. There's a lot of big characters in there. And if you look at some of those players, what they do for their countries internationally, they are stars. And it's the fact that Emma Hayes has managed to keep them grounded enough that even today, Sam Kerr was leading the race for the Golden Boot, but Vivian Miedema from Arsenal, she was only 2 goals behind. And Fran Kirby said, I was trying to service and get her balls so that she could make sure she got that Golden Boot. Or you look at the service that she gives people like Pernilla Harder, and it just seems to be that they're all so in tune with what the main aim of the team is, which is to win. And it doesn't matter who gets the goal at the end of the day, because it serves everyone. And I think it's really impressive that they've managed to build to that point, that they don't let the egos get in the way, that they don't let personal pride get in the way. It's all about the team and about what you can do for the team, and that's how you get your praise.
And then, as much as we know that Emma Hayes says that she does love league titles more because they do show that you are performing at such a high level consistently, they do also love some other cup silverwares. Why not? Chelsea definitely, I think, like I said, it'd be hard to bet against them. But the big one is coming up pretty much in about a week's time, the Champions League final. I mean, Emma says she doesn't know how many sleeps left until it, but she says, whatever, bring it on, we're ready, we want it now. Is that how you see then, Kathleen, going into this one? Do they look like favorites?
I just love Emma, because every time these big events come up, she's like, I don't know what it is, I'm just doing what I can.
Let's go.
It's like she takes everything day by day. I think this final is set up to be so exciting. Barcelona secured their league title today as well. So both teams are going into it as domestic champions. And we've seen with Barcelona that they dominated Manchester City in the first leg when they met them in the Champions League and then lost them, which would give you a good indication that Chelsea do definitely have the power to beat this team. But there's just so many impressive players in that Barcelona squad. You've Caroline Graham-Hansen, you've Jenny Hermoso, someone like Nick Martens, who's like such a key player for the Netherlands, can't even get into the starting squad sometimes with that team. So I think it really depends on the day how both teams turn up, and it could go either way. But Chelsea 100% have such a good chance of actually winning this. And if they win that and still have the FA Cup, they could do a quadruple this year, which has only ever been done by Arsenal before. So for Emma Hayes, that would be incredible.
Incredible indeed. And like I said, I'm sure lots of people would be betting on them to do that. Well, we could talk about Chelsea from now till kingdom come, but I suppose let's talk about some of the other clubs, considering it's the final day of the WSL. Manchester City, how will they be feeling and reflecting on this season?
I think they'll be disappointed, obviously, because everyone wants to win. But I think when they look back on this season, considering how they started out, where they were really dominating teams, struggling to get goals, and how they have managed to build over the year, there's definitely so much there for them to work on for next season. It's something I've been really impressed with City this season, in that Gareth Taylor came in the middle of the COVID pandemic. He had to start working with the squad when they weren't actually able to meet up. They started off the season and it was slow, and they'd brought a lot of players in as well. It was kind of grinding, but it seems to be every time that they didn't manage to get what they wanted, whether it was scoring a goal or whether it was in the Champions League, like that first leg against Barcelona, they were awful, but they came back to the second leg with a much better game plan. And I think it shows that they are willing to adapt. Now, it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of reports that Sam Nunes is going to head back stateside, go back to North Carolina Courage, which would be a massive loss for City because she really dominated in that midfield box-to-box position this year. Roosevelt, also don't know her situation. Again, she didn't have as much as an impact. I think a lot of people would say they would have wanted to see a lot more of her this season. But all in all, I think it's such a good show for what next season could be, how close it went. Like 2 points between the top two teams going into the final day is exactly how you want things to be.
Well, I definitely wanted to talk about Arsenal next, but you did mention, of course, Sam Mewis, and talking about, big named Americans as well. We saw that with Manchester United, having Kristen Press and Tobin Heath. I know you and I had the privilege of speaking with them. But you still look at Man United and the way they started, you almost felt like Manchester United will be more than just Kristen Press and Tobin Heath. However, are you a bit surprised that they couldn't seem to recover when Tobin got injured?
I think generally United suffered really badly with injuries to key players in the second half of the season. And it's something Casey Stoney has talked about, that because of the lack of preseason, they just weren't at the fitness levels. They did have preseason, but it wasn't like a full preseason. Because of the lack of that, they weren't at the fitness levels. They weren't at the levels of stamina that they needed to be to sustain a full season. And she's actually said and come out since saying that she's like totally changed how they're going to do their preseason to make sure that that doesn't happen next year. I think what Tobin Heath brought to the side was a sense of experience. She was the person that you could rely on, a bit like Bruno Fernandes on the men's side. When you needed a goal, you could turn to them and they will provide for you. And I think that's what United missed. They have some really great players, people like Ella Toone, but they're very young and they're still learning. So I think if anything, it just shows that for that United side to be really successful, I do think they need to keep bringing in some experienced players just to kind of lift them to that extra bit, because they struggled against the bigger teams at the end of the season when there wasn't really a reason they should, because they have so much quality there.
And I mean, funny that you obviously talk about the men's side too. When we're talking about the men's side, Manchester United, you're wondering, should United do whatever they can to keep the likes of Edison Cavani, have that experience there and someone that supplies the goals? Similar conversation now for the women, of course, in regards to Tobin Heath. Is this someone that United should actually just try and keep at all costs, or can you see them rebuilding without her?
I think it would be amazing if they could hold on to Heath and Press. Stoney has said that their contracts are up for negotiation once the season ends. I think it will be difficult to hold on to both those players because obviously they have played so much of their careers in the US. There's an Olympics coming up. There are a lot of things bringing them back to the States. But I would also say that I don't think Heath in particular, because she got injured so quickly, had the opportunity to really make her mark here. And part of me hopes that that will keep her at United for longer, help her. And it's also an opportunity for her to kind of get into that leadership role, a bit more of a coaching role towards the end of her career, because there are so many young, exciting players. Even look at someone like Lauren James, like she's incredible and such an exciting player to be able to work with at this stage. So I think United should do whatever they can to keep those players, but I think it might be circumstances out of their control if they do go back. It won't be because they're excited to stay or don't want to play with that team. It'll just be they want to be back in the US for national team duty or whatever it might be.
And finally, now let's talk about Arsenal. I'm pretty sure, as you mentioned, they're the only ones that have done the quadruple on the women's side. They probably won't want Chelsea stealing that crown from them, but it is what it is if it happens. So how will Arsenal be reflecting on this season?
I think Arsenal will be disappointed with their season. Again, they suffered a lot from injuries. It's actually, there's a review going across the club, men's and women's teams, about the strength and conditioning because of the fact that they suffered so badly. And again, if you lost a player like Medina in that squad, it's hard to know if they would able to pull out the results they did. It's a really interesting time for Arsenal as well, because Joe Montemurro, their manager, he's leaving. Today was his last WSL game. He wants to return home to Australia to be with his family. So there's a lot of question marks around Arsenal right now and where they go from here, who they get in for their new manager. Big contracts up for discussion. You know, players like Medina, they're all up for discussion in the next season or so. It was great during the week. They re-signed Katie McCabe, who definitely is one of the best players in the league. So stuff like that is very reassuring. But I think Arsenal will be kind of looking and wondering, where are we going wrong? Why are we slipping so far behind the likes of City and Chelsea and competing with United, who are so new to the league, so new to women's football in general? So it'll be interesting to see where they go. And I think they will need to kind of make some moves, make some spending in the transfer window just to prove that they are still trying to attract these top players.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.